Let's talk right now to Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, who's a Conservative MP and joins us. Good morning to you, Sir Geoffrey.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm asking my audience, asking my guests in the studio, ask you, what is your reaction to that decision by those 5 judges on the Supreme Court?
Well, it's not the outcome, obviously, that the government would have wanted, but I have to say I'm not totally surprised. And as your previous correspondent was just saying, I'm no doubt that the government will be talking to other countries. The principle of people coming to this country and being sent to a third country for processing is still lawful. It's just that the particular case of Rwanda seems to be causing problems, and therefore I imagine that the government will want to now, if it hasn't already started, be negotiating with other countries to replace Rwanda.
Well, indeed, and we know there have been other negotiations, but we also know that the European Union previously has sent people to Rwanda. It was judged to be safe then. We also know that other countries in Europe have also been working on these negotiations, famously, obviously, Italy doing that deal with Albania to send tens and tens of thousands of people back, a lot of their people arriving via Albania, but also even the German government, led by a socialist party, SDP Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, talking, as the Austrian government is as well. We know Sweden has looked at this as well, as other countries. The reality is there aren't going to be many countries around the world who are going to say, oh, yeah, we absolutely want these people that you don't want. Bring them all here, please, we want to have these people. You're not going to get, the Bahamas and, the Luxembourgs choosing to take these countries. So by definition, you're always going to have a problem with the specifics of the sort of country that is willing to be paid to take, frankly, the people that Western nations don't want.
Well, there's 2 interesting points about what you've just said. The first thing is you've given a catalogue of other countries that are now considering this whole matter. When we started to propose Rwanda, there was an outcry from the Labour Party and others on the left that we should even consider such a concept. And now I notice that other more mainstream countries like ourselves are considering doing the same thing. The second thing is to say is the world is a big place. There are plenty of countries that have got a lot of space, but actually not are as wealthy as ourselves, who might well, like Rwanda, actually welcome the cash and are able to do this work perfectly satisfactorily. So yes, of course it's not easy, but I've no doubt there will be other countries out there who we could come to an agreement with to do this.
OK. I mean, the trouble is, as the Prime Minister's statement says, and you make out the point, this is about the principle. The principle is fine. That has gone through all the courts now. The principle is established that we can do this. It's just where you can send them to and what sort of deal you have to have in place. The Prime Minister's statement says we need to end this illegal migration and we will do whatever it takes to do so. And we will now consider next steps, he says, and we will stop the boats. These are all pledges. Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, who's just been thrown out of government earlier this week, she says in her, absolutely damning 3-page letter that the Prime Minister doesn't have a plan B. He doesn't actually intend to fulfil these pledges. He's going to let the government down, get the country down, and doesn't. The whole tone of it is you don't really believe in the policy. You're going through the motions. You've got no intention of doing it. You're going to betray Tory voters who demanded this sort of policy. Do you believe the Prime Minister does have a plan B? Do you believe he will actually ever do this policy?
Well, he needs to have a plan B because this is an overwhelmingly important issue to the British public. I'm getting it on the doorstep. So
you represent a constituency in the Cotswolds. You're not in Kent. You're not in an inner city where you're seeing these people arrive. Why are people bringing this up? I would have thought for most people you'd say, well, the cost of living, inflation rate down to 4.6% today, meeting a government pledge, although nothing to do with government policy, that's going to have more of a daily impact on the lives of your constituents than the Rwanda policy.
Well, this is important, Julia. My constituents can see people coming and living in hotels near to where they live. They can see potentially these people competing with them for public services, for housing, for national health, getting their children into overcrowded schools. And so they are concerned about that. And that's why migration is such an important issue throughout the country. And I would be very surprised if the Prime Minister doesn't have a plan B, because he's going to need to be able to put it to British people in the general election.
And would your expectation be that, and I think is very much hinted at in the statement of the Prime Minister, that the principle has been accepted, but the question will be, you know, the specific reasons why the Supreme Court's 5 judges agreed with the Court of Appeal, who basically said, look, there are problems with Rwanda. We don't trust that people won't be sent back to their country of origin. They will be mistreated, that the processes for deciding asylum claims won't be up to scratch. If the government sends over, I mean, not quite sure why Home Office staff here would be any bleeding good at doing this, but there we are, sends over Home Office staff to train people, get something in writing saying we won't send people back to their home country if they against their will, and sorting out that processology stuff. Do you think that the government will then say, we've done all that, we'd like to go back to the Supreme Court and we'd like to get them to overturn that on that basis?
Well, that is obviously an option. What has been talked about in the last few days is to strengthen this agreement with Rwanda by coming up with a treaty obligation and getting Parliament to ratify that. That is obviously an option. But there has been a strand of opinion in this country, and I've been to Rwanda twice in a social action project for the Conservative Party. I think it's a perfectly safe country, but there has been this feeling in this country that by some that it's not a safe country, and that its justice systems are not as strong as they should be to prevent people being sent either back to their country from where they've come or another third country. And therefore, maybe we need to look at other alternatives. And I'm sure the government is considering these points as we speak.
OK. And in terms of, I must ask you about the fact that this statement is being made, just a day after, or 2 days after we've seen the Home Secretary sacked, and Suella Braverman, that letter which she wrote, absolutely, I mean, wow. I mean, stabbing in the front, not the back, that's certainly the case with that letter. We're still probably going to, at some point, when things perhaps quieten down, get a statement from Suella Braverman after maybe P&Q's next week, where she delivers perhaps even more of her complaints against the current Prime Minister and his policies in relation to the Home Office. What did you make of her resignation? What do you make of sacking, really? What did you make of the letter she wrote? Has she got some fair points to make?
I've described it as a hand grenade being rolled into number 10. It was, as Jacob Rees-Mogg said last night, one of the most excoriating resignation letters, if that's what it is, that one's ever seen. I think there's an element in this of a woman scorned. There may be other motivations. I don't know. Post an election, you never know.
You mean leadership ambitions? Let's not beat about
well, who knows what her motivations might be. I can't delve into her brain, but who knows what that might be. But I think that Rishi is sufficiently robust. He will have people around him working on these policies. And as I say, we need to make progress on this whole immigration issue before the next election. And I'm sure that will be one of his highest priorities.
OK. It was Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.